I have first of all, I have to disclose I'm an undecided voter.
That's all right.
Live just over the border in Massachusetts. One of the big problems for us is that
who cares then?
That's exactly it, right? One of our problems, I think, the rest of the country is fairly not engaged in this race because they don't make the decisions. I mean, unless we move our primary up to Super Duper Tuesday, which is a possibility now. Our primary is in March. By then, everything's kind of decided.
Ours is May or June, so
But they are thinking of moving it up, just like everyone else, and so suddenly we've got this kind of crazy thing going. But I think my real question is, I mean, this has really been a campaign about issues because there's so many things broken, from 6-7 years of George W. Bush, from Republican malfeasance. But I have to admit that, it seems to me like there's only really, one big issue ahead of all that, and you can't fix anything until you get the money out of politics. And I think our own party is also extremely culpable in that. And so I guess my big question is, if there's, let's say, a Democratic Congress and a President Edwards, and there's a bill that comes across and it's been watered down by the lobbyists and it's really something on global warming, something on healthcare, and it's not a good solution because it's basically been negated, nullified by all of that money, by all that influence. Is there going to be a veto? That kind of thing. That's the kind of leadership that I'm looking for in a candidate when I go to the polls.
There are two things. One is there'd be a veto, but before that date, what John has said he would do is you have to fight, and you have to remember when the lobbyists are out there working, they're working saying as they did in the Part D prescription drug benefit for seniors. They go and say, we'll help fund you if you're with us. We will fund your opponent if you're against us.
Yeah.
So people are doing this because so you assume that members of Congress are voting one way or the other because they think that's going to affect their chances for re-election. So what you have to do is go right at that, affect their chances of re-election. So what John has said he would do, and when he says he's going to do it, he means he's going to do it, is that means he will go to districts where people should be voting for against the prescription drug benefit, for example, or for universal health care, or for an aggressive plan to stop global warming. He will go to their districts, and he will make it more difficult for them to get reelected if they're not with it. It means district by district fighting. If you have, in order to get this, you have to have a fighter. You can't be somebody who thinks it all happens in Washington, because you can make all the statements you want on the White House lawn. But if you show up in somebody's district in central Indiana, and you're the President of the United States, you're going to get covered. And if you say that this person is thinking about voting for a prescription drug benefit, that means that we do not negotiate with our prices with pharmaceutical companies, that we pay the suggested retail price for everything, even though the federal government ought to, using market power, be able to negotiate a lower price. And that's what they're thinking of voting for, and you need to tell them, you voters, this constituency needs to tell them how you want them to vote. You put exactly the pressure on the point where they are, that's what they're responding to. They're responding to the influence of money because it helps them get elected, not because of some abstract issue. It helps them get elected. So you have to use exactly that same tool. And the great thing about being president is that wherever you go, the press comes with you.
Right. And
so you're going to get that kind of coverage. So he doesn't have to I don't think he has to get to the veto point. And honestly, this is one of those things, I don't think you have to do it more than once. If they think you're coming, they're not going to give you, they're going to vote in a way that is, they're not always going to vote for you. If they've got a good reason to not vote with you, that's fine. But on so many of these things, there's no good reason not to vote. They pulled, speaking of pharmaceutical companies, they pulled the reverse payments legislation. What was happening was pharmaceutical companies paying the generic companies not to put a generic on the market, so that they can still charge them. That clearly anti-competitive behavior, and apparently not covered by antitrust law. Obviously, we need to change if that's the case. But one of the changes was this legislation, which was going to prohibit these kind of reverse payments. They couldn't get enough votes in the United States Senate. They couldn't get enough votes to pass it, so they're not considering the legislation this year. You know how much the pharmaceuticals have spent on lobbying this year? $35 million. $35 million. And so what you're going to,
and it's a bargain at that.
Huh? That's right. That's right. It was a bargain for them. But you have, so there's no good reason not to be supporting that legislation. So if there's no good reason, then they're gonna feel compelled to not have the president show up in their district. If there is a good reason, then they're not worried. They say, well, I've got this reason, this is my rationale, our district is helped this way or that way. So it's not gonna, it's not gonna mean everything John wants to do is gonna get passed, but it does mean on some things for which there is no good reason. And so much of these things, universal health care and global warming, there is no rationale in opposition.